We can start the meeting. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right, go for it. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our first virtual public meeting for the Henry County Transportation Plan and Trails Master Plan. This is a virtual meeting. It will be recorded and posted later on the project website for your viewing pleasure at a later date, whenever you'd like to. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and just wait a couple minutes, 1 or 2 more minutes, to see if anyone else joins us. And then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Michael Cray. I am the consultant project manager for this planning process, and I'm happy to be here in front of you today. To start it off, I'd like to give Sam Baker, our Henry County project manager, some time to say a few words. So Sam?
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Baker. I am the Director of Transportation Planning with the Henry County Government. I manage Henry County's Transportation Planning Program. I want to thank everyone for your time this evening. Henry County has undertaken an update of Henry County's Transportation Plan and development of an first ever Trails Plan. Under the Transportation Plan, we are going to assess, take a comprehensive look at Henry County's transportation infrastructure, and then we're going to project Henry County's population and employment in the year 2050. And then we're going to come up with a 30-year list of transportation projects for implementation based on this additional people and jobs. So that's where we need your input. The other one is the Trails Plan. That plan is going to come up with a network of trails for Henry County, as well as a name and a logo for our county's trails network. So citizen engagement is very, very important in the development of both plans, and we want your active participation and feedback. So with that, I will turn over to you, Michael.
All right, thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. What I'm going to do is go ahead and run through some introductions of our project team here, just so you know everyone who's involved in this process. That there's even more behind the scenes, but I wanted to go ahead and give everyone a chance to do some introductions. And really to start off with, what I'd like to say is that this is it's a combined plan between the counties and all of the cities in Henry County. So Stockbridge, McDonough, Locust Grove, and Hampton are all funding partners and all very active participants within this planning process. So we're really looking at the county as a whole, because we know that transportation issues don't really follow jurisdictional boundaries. They don't really care. So that's a good thing. And then you'll see here also the list of all the different consulting firms that are part of the planning team. As I said, my name is Michael Cray. I'm with Pond. I'm a transportation planner and a project manager. And I was actually lucky enough to work on the last transportation plan that Henry County did, which was adopted back in 2016. So it's great to see some continuity here and really see what the county is getting to work on in terms of transportation. Some other partners we have are HNTB and Modern Mobility Partners and Blue Cypress Consulting. And Blue Cypress is leading our public engagement activities. And I think I'd like to give them a chance to say hello. Caroline, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. We're excited to be here tonight and looking forward to having some fun participation activities with you all.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, it's great to be here.
All right, Eric.
Hi, good evening. I'm Eric Lusher with Pond, here to support the team and just excited to be here. And thank you all for participating this evening.
Fantastic. Andrew.
Everybody, my name is Andrew Babb. I'm one of two Andrews on this project. I'm a transportation planner and engineer helping out with this. Excited to be here.
Thank you, Andrew Babb. How about Andrew Core?
Hey, everybody. This is Andrew Core. I'm the Director of Landscape Architecture with Pond and helping manage the trail master plan as part of the overall transportation component. So excited to be here and looking forward to really building this first ever trail plan for the county.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Hester. I'm a transportation planner at Pond, and I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say.
And Rebecca is also, at least at one point in her life, was a Henry County resident. And her parents still live there. And Jonathan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Corona, and I'm a planner with Pond. Thank you for being here.
Great. All right. Well, a little bit of some housekeeping items here. First of all, everyone is being very polite so far and keeping their microphones muted. If you could go ahead and do that, unless you're talking, that would be appreciated so we can keep the feedback down. Please, if you have any questions during this process or you want to make a comment, please feel free to go ahead and enter something in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll keep an eye on all that and get to your questions as soon as possible. I don't mind being interrupted or asking questions as we move along. So there will also be time at the very end of this for any general questions and comments and just wrapping up. So there'll be plenty of time throughout to get to provide your input. And one of the ways that we're going to provide that input is through some live polling through Pigeonhole. And so what you see on your screen is a survey, a method that we can take some live surveys, and then we'll present it on the screen as it happens. So if you could, go ahead and take some time and go to Pigeonhole, www.pigeonhole.at, and you can enter that passcode Henry, and it will bring up a list of the survey questions. Alternatively, you can just go ahead and if you're like on a PC or something and you can use your phone to use that QR code, it'll bring you right there. So just take a second and go ahead and get ready. And I will request that you don't answer the questions or don't go to the polling questions until we get there, because there'll be some context and some things that we're going to be going through. So just want to go ahead and register for this and answer the questions as we get there. So I'll give y'all a minute or two, and please let us know if you have any questions or difficulty accessing Pigeonhole. Okay, so hearing no difficulties with Pigeonhole, I'm going to go ahead and move on. But we can always come back to this if you need it. One thing I'd like to do up front is while we're talking about getting input, is go ahead and put a plug in for our project website. We actually have two separate websites for both of these planning processes. And you can see that at the bottom of the screen. And I would encourage you to go ahead and visit the website. We have some information on the planning process. And most importantly, we have an interactive map where you can leave your comments. You can put a point on a specific location where there might be an issue with transportation, whether it's a congested area, a dangerous intersection, someplace that needs a traffic light or a roundabout, or maybe you notice a place that needs a sidewalk. You can leave that information there and leave comments. And this is an excellent way and one of the main methods that we have of getting input from the community. And what you're seeing on the screen is actually a screenshot of what of the input that we've gotten so far. So we're getting a lot of really good input, and we want to continue that because the more we get, the better plan we'll have. So just wanted to go ahead and plug that website. And then throughout the process, we will have updates on there. You'll be able to sign up for public meetings. We'll give notices for public meetings. We'll post our documents and the different technical memos and things as they come out. That will all be on the project website. And just a little bit of background. What are we doing? Why are we doing these plans, and what are the outcomes? Well, the first thing, the transportation plan, it's a comprehensive transportation plan. So we're looking at all modes of transportation within the county. We're looking at roadways for both people and freight for goods movement. We're looking at transit. We're looking at bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. We're thinking about technology in transportation. And so anything transportation related is really housed within this transportation plan. And so there is a pardon me, I'm got the garbage being taken out. Everything within transportation is going to be housed within this transportation plan. The county is recently wrapping up or soon to wrap up a transit plan. And those recommendations will be pulled into the transportation plan. And this trails plan that we're doing, those recommendations will also be housed within this transportation plan. So all these different modes will be within here. This plan is a funding partnership with the Atlanta Regional Commission. They provide some federal dollars for this, with a local match being provided by the county and the cities. Like we were talking before, it's a collaboration between the counties and the cities. And we're also working closely with our different implementation agencies, such as GDOT, CERTA, and the Atlanta Regional Commission, because we want to make sure that these projects are vetted and they're able to be implemented with funds from these partners. Now, the Trails Plan, as Sam was talking about earlier, this is a first ever plan that the county is undertaking. There's not currently a countywide vision for a trail network. And so that's what we're trying to establish. We're trying to establish a countywide network. And that will be connecting important origins and destinations within the county. There's a recommendation that came from the 2016 CTP. And so the county is following up on those recommendations and moving on this. And we're going to go ahead and once we identify that network, we're going to do a little drill down into some what we're calling model miles and really take a closer look at some of these trail networks so we can get into implementation as soon as possible. And in addition, there'll be a branding process so that there'll be a recognizable brand for the county trail system. We already went through these. So overall, the planning process is really a three-step process. First of all, you establish your existing conditions, which is really where we are today. We're kind of at the end of that process where we've kind of taken stock of everything that's on the ground right now, where the congestion is, where the safety issues are, what sidewalks are there today. And once you do that, then you move on to the needs assessment and you really look out to the year 2050 and you're trying to figure out what the issues are based on those existing conditions and the future conditions that we're projecting. Sam mentioned earlier that we're doing population and employment growth projections. So we're trying to take into account how the county is going to grow and how the Atlanta region as a whole is going to grow. So we can make some assumptions on that, on what kind of needs they're going to be. So then based on those needs that we identify, we'll make project and policy recommendations to address those. Those will be, projects will be things that could be enhancing infrastructure. There could be policies like saying we need a complete streets policy in the county. Like if you build a road, you need to make sure you have sidewalks and other things like that. So the recommendations will come at the end of the process. And really, that's the most important thing is we need to have a good set of recommendations that the county can work towards implementing. And then as you see below, throughout this whole process, we're being supported by community engagement, which is what we're doing today. We're out here talking with you in the community, making sure that the data that we've collected and that the things we're observing make sense to you. And we're also going to get your input. What are we missing? Is there anything else that we need to add? And we need, so that's an iterative process throughout all three phases of this plan. So one thing I want to do now, well, first of all, I want to stop. Does that process make sense? Does anyone have any comments at this point? No? Okay. So one thing we want to do here is kind of set the table in terms of goals and objectives for the planning process. And it's important to place into context that Henry County exists within multiple layers and jurisdictions in a transportation context. So Henry County is going to fund things on its own, but it's also going to work with regional partners such as ARC and the state of Georgia. And it's also going to work with federal transportation dollars. And so you can see, Henry County is really the basis of this, but there are other layers and goals that are on top of that. Each one of these jurisdictions does have its own set of goals and objectives for how it spends its money and what they are trying to do. Okay, so starting with the feds, because they do provide us a lot of transportation dollars, and we really need to make sure that we understand what their goals and objectives are so we can have a better opportunity to spend that money. They really look at four main areas within transportation. They're looking at safety, they're looking at infrastructure, innovation, and accountability. And so really the big word there is safety, and then and infrastructure. A big thing with them is they're really trying to move the needle on implementing projects as quickly as possible. Sometimes it can be frustrating because transportation projects take a long time to complete from genesis, the concept, the idea of it, all the way to the actual open to traffic. It takes a long time. It can take up to 20 years. And so at the federal level, they're trying to reduce that as much as possible. They're also looking at innovation. Technology is really driving a lot of things, and that's something that we needed to take into consideration. Excuse me. In terms of the state of Georgia, the state of Georgia has a overall master plan or a plan, a strategic plan. And as part of that, they have goals for the Georgia Department of Transportation that relate back up to that strategic plan. So the number one goal, the first goal is to make Georgia the #1 state for small business. Okay, and so GDOT can help that through modernizing freight infrastructure, reducing how long and how much it costs to move goods. They want to improve access to jobs and want to strengthen Atlanta's position as a global business hub. Another strategic goal is to reform state government. And again, a lot of this has to do with, from a transportation perspective, is maintaining, improving freight mobility, because freight really adds a lot to the Georgia economy and the Atlanta economy. And then you drill down to the local level, freight adds a lot to the Henry County economy. They want to strengthen rural Georgia, and part of strengthening rural Georgia actually is supporting growth within Metro Atlanta. So they want to support manufacturing, agriculture, and distribution within Atlanta. And then putting Georgians first is another strategic goal, and really that's about safety and security of the transportation system. That is very important. And one thing I'll say about safety is that for years, we've been talking about something like Vision Zero, which is trying to get traffic fatalities down to none. That has not happened. However, for years and years, the traffic crash rates have been going down, but for the past few years, they're actually trending up. A lot of that has to do with just distracted driving. And then now that we're getting into COVID, we've been in COVID with lower amounts of travel, especially early in 2020, and higher travel speeds, those crash rates have been going up again. So that's something definitely that we need to consider. And then in terms of regional goals for the Atlanta Regional Commission, they really had three overarching goals: trying to establish world-class infrastructure, creating healthy, livable communities, and then creating a competitive economy. And all of those three together is trying to win the future. And so there's a lot of, ARC does a good job of really drilling down into their different goals and objectives. But really, it's just providing world-class infrastructure is really, reducing congestion, providing increased safety, and creating a lot of different alternative modes for people to use in transportation. Creating a competitive economy really is a lot about creating access to different job centers, making sure that people can get where they need to go as best as possible. And then healthy, livable communities, creating those. A lot of that is about creating walkable communities where you can use transportation assets to lead a healthy life. So that's really kind of setting the stage for these kind of federal, state, and regional goals. And then as we're going to do a SWOT activity here where we talk about different issues and opportunities within Henry County. And once we get out of there, we're going to really, have a lot of these questions about goals and objectives. And so that'll be coming later. But for now, what we're going to do is go ahead and break into groups. Sarah's going to split us into breakout groups. And we're going to do a SWOT activity, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And really, this is just an opportunity to talk about the Henry County transportation system and get your input. So Sarah, with that, why don't you go ahead and split us out? And what do we have for the time on that again? We say
20 minutes.
Yeah.
It will bring you guys automatically back to the main screen.
Yeah, I think that's about
Our
it.
main room. Okay, I'm gonna open them up now, and everyone should go automatically.
Okay. So Sarah, I can go ahead and I can join however I want. Whichever one.
Yeah, so if you go to the you have the breakout rooms button on the bottom right.
Mhm.
So open it
Yep.
and you should be able to find if whoever you're going to
Mhm.
hit
So
join.
I can join that, and then I can come out of it.
Yeah. Using the same way, like go back down to the breakout room button and you'll, yeah. I'm going to go to
Cool.
Caroline's, I think, just in case.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Jonathan's.
Okay. All right.
Uh-oh.
I just
Maybe
noticed that.
set them for 20 seconds instead of 20 minutes.
I think that's exactly what I am. So sorry. Oh my goodness.
That sounds like a good conversation we just had.
It says 20 minutes, but it did 20 seconds.
Uh-oh. Can you do it without setting a time and then just
Sure.
watch the time and bring us all back?
Yeah. I'm not sure why I did that. Okay. That's done. It should work now. All right. Well, that was fun. It said 20 minutes set in it.
I hope I didn't do anything.
No, I don't think so. Okay, I'll just stay here. I'm not gonna mess around and I will time it. We'll
Okay.
just all come back at 7. You think that's our 2 till?
Well, like
Oh, not
6
7. Dear God.
6:50.
Yeah, 6:50.
6:50. Yeah. So if I hit join, I should be able to join, right?
Yeah, I do not think that it was us doing that. I'm not sure why it didn't register the 20 minutes. It said that it had in there, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right.
I'm just
try
gonna stay here.
it. Okay.
Rebecca, did you want to go to a room? No, you don't have to. You're muted though. You weren't talking to me, were you?
I was just saying, are they just not, how does that work? These 2 people that are in here with us, are they just not assigned, or do you have to join? I feel like last time it just like threw you in a room.
Well, Kristen was on there twice, so I assigned her
Oh.
both times, both of her entries into it. So she's
I see her
probably,
name there twice now.
and then, and oh, I think he is only on audio, not video.
Oh, gotcha.
I bet that's why. Yeah, I think that's the problem. And so he can't see it.
If I just click Andrew's name, like join on Andrew, I'm gonna try to go in there. Yes.
Right. Hello. Kirby. Oh,
Hello.
hi.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. We're in a breakout room, so I'm gonna assign you to a breakout room. You'll go automatically, okay? They're
Okay,
just
cool.
doing a little quick SWOT analysis in small groups. So I'm gonna send you to Caroline really quick.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize for joining late. I couldn't get away from work fast
Oh,
enough.
you're fine. No problem. All right, it should send you automatically. If not, it will just ask you and you just say yes. So you should be going to Caroline. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Michael, you saw Caroline's question?
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We're all back. So one thing I'd like to do, I'm not sure if we asked people to have a spokesperson for each group. But if we could, if one person would like to volunteer and give us a relatively succinct run through of what everyone was talking about in terms of your SWOT exercise, maybe just highlight one or two of each one of those. And I think it'd be good to share with the group about what we were talking about. So Andrew Babb, if you maybe would want to volunteer one of your
we actually did volunteer Ennial to speak for us. And yeah, do you mind if I steal your screen share, Michael, so you can see our notes?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
If I can share the correct screen, there we go. That should be helpful.
Perfect.
Everyone, appreciate the opportunity to be here. We were fortunate to have a bicyclist on our team, and one of the things that we talked about is sidewalk or road connectivity. Some of the issues currently out there. To name a few of the things we spoke about, like the rumble strip for the cyclists, even unintended consequences of safety. Folks falling asleep, with the rumble strip, but then, with the cyclists have their challenges through there. And so we're trying to see how we can improve that. And, with the plan we're trying to do here, that some of the things we discussed, lighting, the shoulder widths, lack of sidewalks, the strengths we had. We're fortunate to be off of I-75. Close to the airport. We do have, in my opinion, and we had a lot of road connectivity, but it leads to the weakness of the sidewalk connectivity. Opportunities is, let's see, trail. We do have like economic development, so hopefully with the trail map, we can start developing more and more trail networks with the economic growth, things like that. So. I think that's one of the main things I have to say.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Caroline, your group, if you could.
Yes, let me share my screen. I'm not sure we got the memo in my group about who should be presenting. So if anyone wants to step up, that would be great.
Yeah, if anybody wants to, if they want to just go ahead and unmute themselves and talk. Otherwise, I think, Caroline, you could do it as well.
Okay. All right, no one's going to be brave. So I'll just touch on a couple of items. So a couple of the strengths that we came up with were that the role character still exists within the county. It's not built out yet, and so there's really a chance to preserve a lot of areas for parks and trails, which are great. There have been some new parks built recently, which are very well received for disc golf and walking trails and that kind of thing. And the opportunity, kind of corresponding opportunity with that, is to see more of that development happen. And then right at the end, we learned that we had a couple of people representing different cycling groups there saying that they have, lots of active participants who would be willing to volunteer for trail building and cleanup. Because some of the things that we discovered as weaknesses were the lack of mountain bike trail facilities in Henry County proper. There are many in connecting counties, but we're struggling to think of any in Henry County. We also spent some time talking about the congestion on 75 and 675 and, kind of acknowledged that this was not something that this plan can do a whole lot about, but wanted to also acknowledge that when that congestion starts on 75, it really affects the local highways and kind of, there's a spillover effect as well. And then, one of the opportunities that I'd like to point out is the collaboration with the adjacent counties through the planning process, particularly as it relates to trails. I think everybody would like to see a lot of connectivity. And Sam, I know that's something that is important to you as well, is to bring, the adjacent people to the table. So I thought that was a good one to point out. And maybe I'll pass it back to you, Michael.
Okay, great. And then Jonathan, if your group, if you go ahead.
Yeah, we had a great discussion that would either Philip or Carlos or Russell like to go for us.
Yeah, if you go ahead and just bring your screen up, I'll go ahead and touch on some high points if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Thanks, Philip.
Our strengths, we talked about the interstate, which I think everybody's touched on. One of the things that Carlos brought up was the alternative routes is that we do have secondary roads that in case of accidents on the interstate or whatever congestion that the local people do have the ability to get off. The express lanes were in that same area of conversation. You've got the weaknesses, the north-southbound traffic, limited access through traffic, or through traffic, capacity, infrastructure can't keep up with the amount of warehouses that are going on. Russ brought up some points about hilly terrain and maintenance of existing bike lanes where we're talking about paint, debris such as glass, which from the cyclist point of view, we've replaced tires, which are anywhere between $50 and $100 a piece. And, and it happens all too often. And so we have a tendency to try to stay away from those areas. Lack of trails exists in the maintenance of those trails. And then the enforcement of speed limits. There seems to be a big increase in speeding, which I'm sure is seen across the national level though. So, and then as far as opportunities, population growth, off-road trail, recreational opportunities. We also felt there would be a great opportunity to be able to, if there can be some sort of funding to teach drivers, cyclists or non-vehicular right-of-way on the roadways. There seems to be a lack of education on that. We bear the brunt of that pretty much every day. And then the threats are increasing truck traffic because of the rate at which they're building warehouses, but not building supporting infrastructure to allow the traffic on those in and out of those warehouse areas. So that's a high point. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. I kind of popped in and out of some of those sessions, and I heard some very good discussion. And so we will take all of this information, and all these ideas that were gathered here today, and that will help us in our process. And one thing I will say is, it's really kind of what you're saying is really confirming some of the things that we're already seeing. So that's good news, and I think there's very good synergy between our analysis so far and what we're hearing from you all. So I'm happy about that. But again, thank you so much for that input. So the next part of our meeting tonight is kind of going through a review of the existing conditions that we've got so far. And for each one of these different pieces of the system, transportation system, we're going to have a question about goals and objectives. And so what these come from basically are the goals and objectives from the 2016 transportation plan. And we really want to confirm with you whether or not it makes sense to keep those goals on board right now. So this is a very important piece of the process for us in understanding these goals and objectives. And then we're going to ask a lot of specific questions also about the trails plan. And we don't really have any goals and objectives for this, not officially. So this is also a very important part of that process. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go through. And the first thing I want to talk about are safety. And so what you see here is a heat map of crash locations within Henry County between 2016 and 2020, so the past 5 years. Almost 60,000 crashes in Henry County in that time period, which is quite a few. And you'll see from the heat map that really the crashes follow where the most volume on the roadways are. So I-75 is a huge driver of accidents with the county, and also each one of the interchanges. And then your more higher traveled non-interstate roadways, which makes sense. But in terms of bicycle crashes, there were 65 bicycle related crashes in the past 5 years, which is less than 1%. It's 1/10 of 1%, which is pretty low. Although we'd love to see those numbers get lower. And I think this tells a story that there really aren't a lot of bicycle accommodations in the county, but they're kind of all spread out throughout the county. In terms of commercial vehicles, which really we're talking about trucks here, this is very similar to the overall map, but really the heaviest areas are on I-75 and all the different interchanges. You've got pockets here and there, especially at the 155 interchange here, and there's a lot of truck crashes, but really you're seeing most of the volumes of trucks are following I-75, and that's where most of the crashes are. And then there were 135 fatal crashes throughout the county in the past 5 years, which is quite a few, and it's spread out throughout the county. And this is definitely something that we need to take into consideration and try to see if we can make it an impact on this, because that's quite a few fatal crashes for one county. So based on that, this is our first Pigeonhole question. So you can go back to Pigeonhole and go and open that back up. You can answer that question. Do you agree that the county must continue to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries on public roads? Is that something that we need to be considering during this planning process?
And Michael, I just want to jump in because we had a couple of people join since you told people how to do this. And up at the top left of that screen, if you go to www.pigeonhole.at/Henry, you'll be able to log in.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into the Pigeonhole. I'm unable to. Let me see.
Do.com. It's not there.
I see it. I see it at the top. Go to Pigeonhole.
Yeah, it's .at. Yes. If you could just do pigeonhole.at, and then it will ask you for a code, and you just put in Henry, and it will bring it up.
I just put a link in the chat too.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
So so we got 9 votes so far. This vote will stay active. So you can go ahead and you can answer that whenever you get an opportunity. And I just would, so it looks like we have a strong agreement for the most part that we should continue to think about this.
Yep.
Okay. So now I'm going to kind of move into some more bicycle pedestrian considerations here. And what you see is a map of all of the sidewalks within the county. You'll see in purple are sidewalks that were built as of 2016. And then in orange are the additional sidewalks that have been built since 2021. And the biggest observation that we see with the sidewalk map is that almost all of the sidewalks are within subdivisions. So, you know, housing developments have been built, there's sidewalks within the development, but then once you get out of that, there's not, the connectivity really isn't there on the arterial roads and the collector roads. And so I think, you know, that's kind of, I think something we heard in our SWOT activity with that lack of connectivity. And we see it on this map. I mean, it's very clear to us that that connectivity isn't there. So, but it's needed, you know, if you want to be able to walk someplace other than just in your, you know, within your development, you need those connections. And then we think about bicycle connectivity. This is a map here of all the different bike facilities in the county. And in the green, we see really only two. We only see two real trails, right? This is, so this one I'm pointing at here with the laser pointer is the Panola Mountain extension that was recently completed by the county that connects from Rockdale County to Austin Road Middle School. And there are plans to extend that for about another mile, I think 8 or 9/10 of a mile from there. And then you've got a trail basically within a park in Stockbridge. And so those are your only two kind of real trail facilities in the county. Other than that, you do have a conventional bike lane along Eagles Landing, right there at the interchange. And if you've ever driven there, you've probably seen that bike lane, and you've probably never seen anyone in the bike lane. You know, that's a major 6-lane roadway at that point, heavy traffic, heavy speeds. It's not really that comfortable of an environment. It's nice that those accommodations are there. However, you know, it's still, you know, not a very conducive environment. You do have another multi-use path on Jonesboro Road coming out of McDonough. And then in Hampton, this is really, it's a designation from the state of a bike route, a state bike route. But it's just a shared travel lane, and there's really no facilities there. And so, you know, so what we're seeing here in terms of both pedestrian connectivity and bicycle connectivity is that, you know, there could be some improvements within the county. And then so based on that, there's a quality of life goal that we have. And do you agree that quality of life improvements can be made possible through transportation improvements? Really, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about both bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Does that enhance quality of life?
Hey, Michael, an observation here on this particular question. This is Carlos. You know, when you ask a question, do you agree that quality of life improvements can be made possible through transportation improvements? I mean, when you provide the results of the surveys. I mean, do people realize that we're not only talking about roads, right? We're talking about also about trails and sidewalks and everything else.
Yes, that is specifically what this question is about. Yeah, and it is kind of vague when we just say transportation improvements, but really we're talking about kind of like the sometimes they're called alternative transportations. Okay, and then I see from Allison in the chat that she pressed the wrong button. And was that the strongly disagree? Okay, so we'll record that and consider that in post meeting on that. But it looks like we definitely have strong agreement here. And so this is an interesting map, and this is called something that we do a lot. It's called walking propensity. And this is just a predictive assessment that we do. And we take all these inputs. We're looking at like the size of blocks, of the city blocks, with the understanding that smaller blocks provide more connections, and that entices more walking. We're looking at proximity to things like schools and parks, or commercial areas, or higher density residential, and also taking into consideration where the pedestrian crashes are taking place. And we put this all into basically kind of a model script, and we come up with a predictive analysis of where people would walk if there were sidewalks. That's where we would expect them to see. And so on this map, the hotter colors, the reds and the oranges and the yellows, those are the areas where we would expect to see the most walkers. And so this is really going to help us with our assessment of where sidewalks should go and things like that. And so you'll see, it kind of it makes sense from an eye test of where you would think they are. A lot of it really are in the incorporated areas in the downtown areas. And in addition to that, you've got things like Piedmont Henry Hospital. There's a lot of activity there that could enhance that, entice that growth. And also along Jodeco Road, there's the Eagles Landing. There's a school cluster there with the Eagles Landing High School and the middle school, and a lot of residential around there, and a little bit of a street grid. And so we really think that that's an area where you can see a lot of walking as well. So this really helps us reduce where we're looking at pedestrian infrastructure specifically. So now, when we think about the trail plan, this next series of questions is you have, from 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. This is going to help us with these goals here. So, do you agree with this? The Henry County Trails Plan should enhance connections to schools and parks. Agree or disagree? Okay. So we've got 10 votes and 4.7 average of very close to strongly agree, which I think that makes a lot of sense as well. So thank you. And the next question is next statement, and whether or not you agree, is the Henry County Trails Plan should enhance connections to major activity centers. And activity centers are just where, commercial areas, downtown areas, places where things happen. Think like the McDonough Square, downtown Hampton, Tanger Outlets. Speaking of Tanger Outlets, we had this discussion. I say it's Tanger, and Rebecca from Henry County says it's Tanger. Is that what everybody else says? Not Tanger?
I have never heard anyone say Tanger. Oh my goodness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, Tanger.
I think so too.
Vote for Tanger over here. Yes.
Yankees.
I've heard
Jeez.
both, but I say Tanger.
Yeah, I think that's the proper way. Okay. Well, again, we have a very, a lot of agreement on that. We need to think about connections to these activity centers as well. So this one is talking about making connections for the trails plan to surrounding communities. Something that the county has already done by connecting to the Panola Mountain Trail system. And I know when I was in Caroline's group, I believe we were talking about potential connections down to Spalding County using old railroads. Do we need to also consider connecting to these other communities? So this is, I think we have very good, pretty strong agreement on this. However, it's a little lower than a couple of other ones. Would anyone say, maybe there's a few people that might be a little bit more lukewarm on this particular one. Does anyone want to comment on that? Like, is it because you'd rather focus on other things, or?
Hey, Michael, I think, in an ideal world, right, we would want to have all these things, right? And so I think we also have to realize that, we may be voting with the heart and with us wanting to see this, but the reality is resources will be allocated where it makes more sense. And so that's perhaps why you kind of see this over here. Maybe now we're trying to think a little bit more with the brain instead of with the heart, realizing that, we're not going to get all of this. I mean, right. That would be a great wish list, but that's not how it works, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with that. Thank you.
One point just to consider as we go through these, that this, the reason why we ask questions like this and why it can be helpful to us is that it does help give us a sense of priorities, because everything's important, right? But this gives us a little bit of a sense relative to all the different priorities that we have to help us understand as we go through, later parts of this planning process of how we reconcile those priorities when they're not, when we can't do it all, and when we know that we may need to address, competing interests and things of that nature.
That's a great point, Eric. So it looks like we've only got 4 votes on this one so far. I don't know if some folks are dropping off, but if you get a chance, go ahead and answer that question.
Can you elaborate on on that question? It's just.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say
the
anything.
trails would.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Enhancing trail connections within the city. So really talking about, trying to like intra-city connections. So, thinking a place with somewhere within from McDonough to McDonough, as opposed to, from, the McDonough Square to Ola or something. Kind of, I guess these are more of a localized connection. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. think. Okay, and so the Henry County Trails Plan should create more on-street bicycle facilities. So by on-street, that's like, that's a bicycle lane, you know, your traditional bike lane. You do have your own space, but you're on the roadway with traffic.
Michael, I don't know if this is the place to ask this question, but I'm curious. I mean, I think bicycle dedicated lanes are awesome. But has Henry thought about potentially having, you know, a separate, and I'm going to try to describe it, and hopefully this makes sense, but you know, in cities or towns in Europe, next to a busy road, there's basically like a trail next to it. It's paved, and it's probably maybe 6 feet wide at the most. And it's used for walking, running, and cycling for commuters that go from town to town and cycle that. But so it's not a dedicated, you know, in lane within the lanes of traffic, but it's one next to it. And so again, I don't know if this is the right venue to kind of bring that up for future projects, but it's something that perhaps, you know, could be considered.
Almost sounds like the Beltline in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is absolutely the right venue for this. And yeah, I mean, Sam, if you wanted to mention anything about that, I'm not sure if you know, the county currently has those kind of plans. I would consider that the term I would use for that is a side path, where you're adjacent to the roadway, and we're actually gonna have a question about this next.
Oh, okay.
You're adjacent to the roadway, you know, but it's a dedicated space for it.
I would prefer using that 4 foot, you know, to widen a 5 foot sidewalk to, you know, make it 9 or 10 foot, make a multi-use. So, you know, you don't have to depend mostly on the road for that, and then all the debris on the road. You know, when you have that 4 foot, sometimes it's not maintained, and the stripe starts to disappear. So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I worked in Hall County, where along a road, there was a trail. It wasn't on the road, and it wasn't totally off road either. It was just close to it, maybe 10 foot away. So that provides some safe zone for pedestrians and bicyclists to use that trail, being away from all the traffic of the road. But it wasn't totally, I guess, an off-road. It was still visible, I guess, from the road. So maybe then that would be the concept from Europe, I guess, you're probably talking about. Something in between, I guess, off-road and on-road facility again.
Yeah, and you know what? To me, it gets down to, well, there's a term is called level of comfort for bicyclists, and it's the idea that, you know, as there's more automobile traffic and higher traffic speeds, it becomes less and less comfortable for a cyclist to share that road, right? And especially if there's no facility. And then so you have let's say you have a busy road with no sort of space at all carved out for a bicycle. That's going to be your lowest level of comfort. You add a bicycle lane, and you can increase that level of comfort, you know, but it's still only a stripe, you know, and not everyone would necessarily feel as comfortable for it. It does give you a little bit of space, maybe provides at least an idea of some safety. And then if you jump up, you can have a buffered bicycle lane where you have maybe a little bit more space, but you're still on the street. And then you can get to a side path where you're actually separated from the roadway. You might be like up on a curve, and there might be some more, you know, more vertical and horizontal separation. And that, you know, as you do that, you get higher and higher levels of comfort for people. And the confidence in the cyclist can go lower and lower, and they can still use that roadway. So I think that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that level of comfort. Okay, And so now we're talking more about that kind of side path, or like a greenway trail, like the belt line that is completely separated from the roadway. It's running on its own right of way, and it has limited interactions with the roadway network. Should the trails plan create more of those types of facilities? Those are the Cadillac facilities. And we have high agreement there, which makes sense. I would expect that.
Michael, this is Phil.
Yes.
If I can ask just one question.
Yes.
Would these be the types of things that you would see maybe that would be like interconnecting the different population centers in the county?
Yeah, I think that's
rather than something alongside of a arterial road or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's exactly what we're going to be considering. Yeah. Is there a way that we can have kind of a long distance connection that isn't necessarily adjacent to a roadway? Yeah. I think we'd like to find those areas.
Thank you.
Yep. So when we think about trails, our trails are mostly for transportation purposes. So they are for getting you from point A to point B, you know, so you can use your bicycle like an automobile.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Michael, there are several folks in this call that, I mean, if there was a dedicated transportation trail from McDonough to the airport, because most of us work in this particular area, I mean, we would cycle this in commute. But I mean, there's no opportunities like that.
Right. So it'd be nice if we could have that, but it seems like there are other reasons, and I think we can get at it with our next question for trails. And so the question is, trails are more about improving quality of life. So yeah, so this is trending much more strongly agree. So I think this group is really showing us that these questions is, you know, trails are about, you know, they are about transportation, but they're also, and probably more so, about improving the quality of life.
I think it's part of this because it's just at a certain skill level as a cyclist, maybe, yeah, you could commute from McDonough to, say, the airport. But that, to me, there's only a few people that are at that level of endurance. And so, we're just so spread out. It's sort of the state of affairs or something. So that's why I see it being more for things like, you know, cycling teams and mountain bike teams and just the general, you know, kind of recreational quality of life things.
I think it's a great point.
I agree as well, William.
Okay, so thank you. That really gives us some good direction for the trails plan. And now I just kind of want to take a step back and, you know, kind of generally think about the county as a whole again. And there are 63,000 jobs within Henry County, and they're you know, they're throughout the county, but really there are a few major and minor clusters of jobs. So you got Piedmont Henry Hospital along Eagles Landing by I-75, big job cluster. And then you've got the State Route 155. And I even include the State Route 20 interchange in there as well with I-75, because that has a ton of commercial jobs as well. So you've got commercial and warehousing and distribution related jobs in that cluster. So those are two really big clusters within the county. And then you've got some other minor clusters that, Locust Grove, downtown McDonough, Jonesboro Road, State Route 138, and then that unincorporated Fairview area in the north of the county. And then when we look at commuting patterns, we've got two maps we're showing here on this screen. The first one is where the people who live in Henry County, where do they commute? Where are they working? And that's the map on the left. And you can see there are a few clusters within Henry County, and it corresponds to those the clusters that we showed at the last map. But outside of Henry County, you've got the airport, you've got downtown, midtown Atlanta as major draws as well. So we do have a lot of commuting, and really, excuse me, shows the importance of I-75 connecting Henry County to job centers throughout the rest of the region. The second map on the right shows where people who work in Henry County, where they live. And we're pulling, the Henry County employers are pulling a lot from within Henry County. You can see that most of the highest concentrations of workers are actually from Henry County, but it is pulling from the neighboring counties, particularly Clayton County. So that to me shows the need for those east-west connections to get employees to and from their jobs within Henry County. And to continue with commuting and travel flows, what you're seeing here is a map of the multi-lane roads within Henry County. And we've been talking about this a lot, or I've heard this comment a lot, of how Henry County does have alternatives to I-75. However, mostly there are these 2-lane roads that don't have turn lanes, and an accident or something can really on I-75 can really jam up those roadways. And this really illustrates that fact. Most of your multi-lane roads that are outside of I-75 are those east-west connections, and they're all kind of filtering in and flowing into I-75 to provide that north-south mobility within the county. The only other north-south roadway that with multi-lanes is Terra Boulevard, US 1941. There's the extreme western part of the county. So that north-south mobility is really a lot more difficult here. Then we got our average traffic as seen by the GDOT count stations. Of course, I-75 is the major traffic carrier in the county, but other high volume roadways that are outside of the interstate include State Route 138, Jonesboro Road, East Lake Parkway, US 1941, State Route 20, Bill Gardner Parkway, and State Route 42. Kind of the main cast of characters that you would expect. And as you can see, a lot of that volume is concentrated along the I-75 corridor. And this is a travel demand model. This is a tool that we use to look at it in current conditions, but we also, more importantly, use it to look out to the 2050 when we do our population and employment forecasts and really try to figure out what's going on here. And this map shows daily volumes based on the travel demand model. And then we use those volumes to come up with something called level of service. Level of service is really a measure of congestion, and it is measured in very similar to a grading scale. So A and B is good in the sense that there's no congestion. C or D, there's more traffic building, but there's still not very much delay. And then E and F is your most heavily congested roadways. And generally, from a planning perspective, what you would plan for is you would consider E or F a failing condition, and anything under that, it would be an acceptable level of congestion. And so this is the travel demand model showing 2020 level of service conditions. And per the travel demand model, there isn't a ton of congestion on the roadway network. We've only got a few of the E and F, the failing conditions, mostly State Route 81 coming out of McDonough, and then some of your interchanges and exits off of I-75. That was for the AM period. This is for the PM period. PM period is typically worse. This is your afternoon rush hour. And again, via the travel demand model, we're not seeing quite as much. But then what we're showing here, this is INRIX data. This is data, real world travel data that is collected via cell phones and automobiles, their satellite systems and things like that, pinging it. And this is giving us speed data. And what we're showing here is something called a travel time index, or TTI. And TTI is a measure of your free flow speed, about how long it would take to get somewhere if there were no traffic versus how long it actually takes to get somewhere. And so in your in the legend here, you can see, 1 is green. 1.0 means that's a speed limit drive, right, to get someplace. Anything over that 1.0 ratio is how much longer it takes. So 1.5 would be up to 50% longer of a trip, and then you get you can see the real world measurements is you can have almost 3 times your the length of time it would take on a free flow uncongested travel. And this is really enlightening, I think, because it shows a lot of that congestion on State Route 155 that we've been hearing you all talk about. I heard a comment about 155. You can go through 2 or 3 cycles on the street light, and you get 2 or 3 trucks to move through here. So this really shows this congested area here, and this is showing for a typical weekday at 5 p.m. On 155, and then you've got also a lot coming out of downtown McDonough, Jonesboro Road, and State Route 20. And then also surprising to me is State Route 20 between Hampton and I-75, that you've got an increased travel time there. So the travel demand model doesn't pick up on this quite as much in the current year. So I'm glad we have this data that can really show us what's actually happening on the ground. And this is the current transit system. Henry County Transit did have a fixed route system that it implemented, unfortunately, right before COVID hit. Boardings went, in the tank when everybody was staying home from work. And so that fixed route system was shelved for the time being. And so this is what we're showing here is the existing fixed route transit system, which is really the express bus operated by ATL. And so you've got park and rides in McDonough, Stockbridge, and Hampton. And these bus routes take you up to the job centers in downtown, Midtown Atlanta. These are your major freight routes based on, again, this is GDOT count station data, and they collect how many commercial vehicles are traveling on these roadways. And off the interstate is the highest truck travel, but off of the interstate network, you've got State Route 20, 138, of course, State Route 155, Eagles Landing Parkway, and Jonesboro Road. So these are your major carriers of truck traffic. So those are kind of, yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Going back to that last slide. My wife and I, we just moved from Locust Grove, and where you see on Highway 42, I think, even though you may not have the data at this point, depending upon when this data was collected. But between Locust Grove and McDonough, that has just filled with warehouses, and they're still building. And I think that you'll see a considerable amount of increased traffic flow in there as well for trucks.
Yes. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And we might, so this data is based on available count stations. And I'm not sure if there's one there to collect that particular data. That's a great point. So, so here's a goal that we've had since the 2016 CTP is enhancing mobility and accessibility for people and goods. Is that something we need to consider? Is enhancing that mobility, and really we're talking about, you know, this roadway mobility here. So it looks like we've got pretty strong agreement here that we need to consider this, which makes sense. Thank you. Now, in terms of economic development, do you agree that the county can continue to improve truck routes and access to freight land use and support economic development? That's something that we need to continue to consider.
Michael, this is Phil again. And as far as this question is concerned, I believe that the county should continue to improve the county truck routes, but adding on that providing access to freight land use and support economic development, if you continue to do that without improving the infrastructure to support that additional traffic flow, we're just going to create a bigger problem. I mean, that's just my opinion. And it's already pretty bad at this point. So I don't know how to really answer this. I'd like to see them continue to improve the county truck routes, but I'm not so sure I want to support more warehousing, more warehouses built.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, an important part of transportation is how it connects and supports land use. You know, and so there'll be a question later about, you know, using transportation investments to support the land use vision that's been laid out by the county. And, you know, the community development department and the comprehensive planning aspect of the county is also very important. We need to consider that. And that's really where it comes into the, you know, permitting and zoning, the warehousing type of development. So it's a discussion that really needs to be had during this process as well.
All right, well, thank you, Michael.
Yep.
Excuse
Yeah, and
me.
I can see.
Can I add
Yeah.
that the way the question is worded, it says, do you agree that the county can continue to improve the roads? Just to kind of piggyback off of Phil, I'm not so sure that they technically can, if you would, because of the warehouses after warehouse after warehouse after warehouse, because the county's focus is on bringing in the warehouse. They don't seem to be concerned about the roads and making room for the freight trucks and as well as the residents. So if they're going to focus on just bringing it in, that's where their focus is. They are not necessarily, it doesn't seem like they can focus on the roads and the infrastructure.
I mean, yeah, that definitely makes sense. You know, we're already kind of behind the 8 ball here, right? We're kind of playing catch up on all of this. And, you know, like, what do we actually have the ability to do? But I think it's, you know, I think we're going to try. And I think, but that land use discussion also needs to be had. And there are other things. Sam, I know there's been discussion in the past of like a community improvement district around Estero 155. Is that something that's happening or has already happened? Do you know?
It's not happening right now. There was some discussion about it, but no action was taken.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because a community improvement district could be definitely could be a way where businesses could come together and they would tax themselves at an additional millage rate, and then they could use that money to do transportation investments. So that's something that could be considered, but like Sam said, it's not in place yet. Okay. So asset management is really what we're talking here is maintenance, right? How are the roadways maintained and the bridges maintained? And the map you see here is of all the bridges in the county. And Henry County has fantastic bridges. There are 139 in the county, and they're all either fair or good condition. And then there's poor condition. And so that's great news. So the county is doing a good job of maintaining those bridges. And so the question is, should we continue to maintain transportation infrastructure in a state of good repair? Keep those potholes filled. Keep the bridges from falling down. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you for the input.
Is there a difference in this plan for just filling the potholes?
Okay, and so, so we already got these votes. This is great. Okay, so this is if you had the budget, how would you prioritize it? And I think you're allowed five answers. Is that correct?
Okay.
I think you can pick your top five of different modes of transportation. And so you're gonna have to prioritize.
Somebody was asking a question a second ago.
Yeah, this is Stephen Thomas. I was trying to ask a question on the last slide about the infrastructure. You mentioned just filling the potholes. Is there a difference at what point we just continue to fill potholes and we actually repair roads?
Yeah, definitely. The Henry County Department of Transportation is doing maintenance on roadways, and yeah, there's different levels when it comes to maintenance. You can just do filling potholes, and when it gets to a point where the roadway has deteriorated to a point where you can't really patch it, you got to come in and resurface the whole roadway. That happens as well, and that's part of that maintenance budget.
Seems like there's a lot of those around the county. I've seen more and more lately.
That need that type of improvement?
Yes, that have more potholes filled than they have road left.
Okay. Are there any places in particular?
There's a lot I live over in the Hampton area, so Hillview, Rocky Creek, a lot of the areas back up in those roads. There's a lot of them over here that are. You can see the ruts in the road where the big trucks go, and it's just sinking. And they patch a lot of holes over here.
Okay.
Stephen, speaking of road resurfacing, you may or may not have heard that Henry County is considering a transportation special purpose local option sales tax this upcoming November 2nd. So it will be on the ballot for citizens to consider an additional 1% sales tax to fund transportation projects, including resurfacing of roads. If it passes, it's going to raise about $245 million over the next 5 years. From that, 10 million on the county side is going to be allocated towards road resurfacing all over the county. Now, you mentioned you are in Hampton. Hampton also has its own list of road projects, including various road resurfacing in Hampton. So just wanted to pass this information to you, that there is a referendum coming up on November 2nd, an important decision for the county vote, city and county voters to make.
Great, thank you.
Well, great. Well, thank you for your votes. Looks like our top 5 kind of modes or areas of prioritization are providing more multi-use side paths adjacent to the roadway maintenance, increasing multi-use greenway trails, increasing roadway capacity, and building strategic new roadway corridors. So yeah, that's a very interesting mix. Can't say that I disagree with it, and I think it's great. Thank you for your input there. So now we kind of get into this land use discussion we're talking about. And existing land use in the county is made up, there's still a lot of agriculture kind of open space within the county. Over 40% of the county is still, open space. And when you think about that, it's also, available to develop. It just hasn't been developed yet. And then after that, you've got single family residential, medium density residential, parks and conservation areas, public and institutional, publicly owned lands, and then some transitional lands, which are being cleared and getting ready for these other uses. So what we see here is really a land use pattern dominated by residential uses with a lot of open space still. And that's kind of where we're at with the current conditions in the county. And then when you look at future land use, it's kind of really, a lot of the same. All this stuff that you see in the yellows and the tans, those are lower density residential. So you kind of your single family residential developments, single family residential neighborhoods. And that's the majority of the county. You do have, your industrial areas, in Stair Route 155 area and down Stair Route 42. And then you've got more of these in this purple is mixed use, where there's, more of a combination of housing and commercial opportunities, maybe some office uses and things like that. And that's kind of the plan for Henry County going forward. So we're definitely taking that into consideration when we think about transportation. And do you think that transportation investments should support that vision that's been laid out? Do we need to be considering that when we're talking about these transportation investments? So it looks like, as of right now, we definitely don't have as much support for this.
So you're saying that like so this transportation plan should support the county's existing plan for land use, like it or not. So now I guess the thing, if you don't really agree with the county's current plan for land use, then you would disagree with it. So
that's what, yes,
yeah.
That's kind of, yeah.
That
makes sense. Okay. Yeah, thank you. This is is that a statement that we just heard? Is that kind of what we're thinking here? Is that maybe the land use vision that we see is not necessarily, you don't necessarily love that, this vision? And that's kind of why why you don't necessarily support that in terms of the transportation investments?
Michael, this is Phil. That would be based upon the clarification that we had. That would be the reason why I voted disagree. So
that makes sense.
I'm glad that we had that clarification because I was a little confused on it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whoever asked
I think it's a little bit just, we have enough warehouses. We have enough I don't know, bringing in all of the, there's some degree of like the way you were phrasing it too, just saying that we have all this green space that we just have to develop it. It's like, please leave the green space. That is, I guess, a concern of a large amount of the county. It's just that, we saw it and we just watched it go from kind of a lot of just forest, a lot of nature to just being bulldozed over. So we're not past the brink yet, is kind of what you were saying. And let's just, I don't want to see the transportation policy, just shove us that way. So
that makes sense.
May I
be clear,
may I say something?
Yeah, please.
What I disagree with, I mean, wouldn't it be advantageous if you went ahead and planned the trails and family areas and park areas before all the development gets established?
Yeah, I think that's a great
I mean,
point.
it's like, putting the horse, putting the horse behind the wagon, it doesn't make sense. That's one of the
I agree with that. It just seemed like, I agree with what you said, but
it's just crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to get into all of this nuance with one question, but I think that it totally it's coming out here is that like in a perfect world, transportation investments should be supporting this vision and helping it come to fruition. We should plan these trails, and then you could build communities around them.
Right, right. I mean,
and,
it just
but then also we might not be agreeing with what this vision is that's been set forth. And that might be a different discussion that or an additional discussion that we need to have. So I think there's a lot of.
Right now I see a focus on taking care of the trucks and taking care of the warehouses that are in the Henry County. I understand that our growth in that area, but it just seems like it's going backwards. Right now you have all this open land, and you're going to need to acquire the land. You're going to need this variances to go through certain areas and things of that nature. And how are you going to do that if you're just building? You build a subdivision just to build a subdivision because the developer wants to come in and do it, or we go the warehouse route again. I mean, right now there's a lot of trucks coming up 75 now out of Henry.
Yeah,
that's
great. Thank you. I think this is great discussion. Go ahead.
One more point. Yeah, just one more point is that I think what we're hearing is a lack of balance, right? Yeah. We're seeing focus on one particular aspect of the land use plan per se. And what we need is to have, I guess, just balance in it. And there is none at this point. And it doesn't appear that the county is even slightly interested in providing that balance. Their sole focus, it seems, has been just these warehouses. Yeah. And so that's just my perspective.
I mean, it's from a cyclist point of view. I mean, a lot of times when we're out on the road, we actually get to see a lot of things up close and slow because we're on our bikes. And one of the main things, and probably some of the guys that are online right now will tell you, I wouldn't go near 155. I wouldn't go near 212. I wouldn't go near even 16. I mean, there's roads I know I would never go near it because the trucks done took over everything. You see what I'm saying? So right now, that's the mindset right now. And if I know it as a cyclist and a person who wants to be, out on the road, I mean, you got to put a governor on it somewhere. Somewhere along the line, you have to put a governor in it. Growth is great, but it's got to be positive, bro.
Well, thank you. This is a great discussion, and I really appreciate it. I think it gives us a lot of food for thought. And it's getting close to 8 o'clock, and I appreciate all your time. There's only a few more slides to get through. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on and try to get through these quickly and be mindful of everyone's time here tonight. So we want to talk about implementation. What you see up here is, the different SPLOSTs that the county has had. A SPLOST is a special purpose local option sales tax. And this is where the county can use this money to build infrastructure. It could build either, a jail, a library, or roads. And so there's a competition there for different types of infrastructure. And you'll see on the right how much has actually been allocated to transportation. And the past two, SPLOST 2 and 3, 70% was allocated to transportation, which if you want those types of improvements, that's the kind of number you really want to see to get things implemented. And so, and then Sam was talking about there's a T-SPLOST that potential vote, or a vote that's going to be happening in November, which would give an additional infusion of money for transportation. And what we want to consider here with this question is, do you agree that the county should maintain transportation spending at appropriate levels to fund these needs and maintenance? Does the county need to continue to make those types of funding decisions? Okay, so we have pretty unanimous agreement here. There's a few other considerations that we want to talk about. And one is about environmental quality. Is that something that we need to consider in our transportation, from a transportation perspective, is environmental quality? And some of the things Charles was talking about with open spaces being converted to development, can you use transportation to help to preserve some things, whether it's a greenway trail, that's or maybe a forest preserve that could be used for also transportation purposes or just recreation purposes. And we have strong agreement here as well. Makes sense. And this is kind of getting back to the question of, that the land use and transportation is should the county and the cities and all these different kind of jurisdictions really be working together to make these decisions? Okay. And finally, last question here. This is just an open-ended thing. Is there anything that we're missing right now in terms of goals and objectives? And is there something that we haven't talked about that you think we need to include?
One random point I was going to bring up that I wanted to voice was, and I'm putting it in here too, but I would say, I guess different people feel different ways, but the roundabouts that have been added, I know I live near one off of East Lake Road near Timber Ridge Elementary, and they're great. I just love roundabouts everywhere. They seem to really solve a lot of problems, and I don't see any downside. So I would love to see everywhere I go. I'm just like, could you please replace that stoplight with a roundabout? Life would be so much better. That's just my 2 cents.
Great point. All right. Well, the last thing I just wanted to go ahead and mention the websites again. We're going to continue this online input here. So, we talked pretty high level about things today, and if you go to the website and you go to the mapping feature for both the transportation plan and the trails plan, leave your comments there. We take a direct download from that and we map this out and we have all this information, and it really helps us when we're making these decisions and we're looking at things. So the more input we get here, the easier it is for all of us to do our job. So I really recommend going there, tell people about it, and it's also where there'll be future information about events like this. And then finally, we're moving on now to the needs assessment phase, where we've kind of got this baseline, and now we're going to be looking into more of this, identifying these problems and issues that we need to address. So that's the point we're at right now. Once we're done towards the end of that phase, we'll be coming back to you all and having another community meeting. So be on the lookout for that. That won't be till closer to the holidays, Thanksgiving time, a little before that. But yeah, those are the next steps. And with that being said, thank you very much. Any questions? And if not, the meeting is adjourned. But again, the floor is open for any questions or comments. All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate your participation, and have a great evening.